Let's have a showdown. Floetrol versus Floetrol versus Floetrol. Hey everybody, it's Anna. Welcome back to my fluid art channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. So a lot of us fluid artists use Floetrol in our artwork. We use it as a pouring medium. It helps to thin the paint as well as extending its wet working time so it doesn't dry quite as quickly. It makes it flow better, and it often helps our paint mixture make cells. It makes it kind of a more reactive mixture, and it makes really beautiful artwork. So this is the Floetrol that I get in the United States. This is by Flood Floetrol. It's like $18 to $20 for a gallon. This is Owatrol brand Floetrol, so this is like the European version. And this is called Easy Flow because what I'm told is that Easy Flow is the name for Owatrol Floetrol here in the United States, but in Europe it is Floetrol by Owatrol. And then this, of course, is Australian Flood Floetrol, which is the liquid gold that is used to help make cell activators in the Shelly Art Bloom and Molly's Swipes and all of those wonderful things. So 3 different types of Floetrol. You would think that they'd all work pretty well and pretty interchangeable, but I've used this one, but I've never used this one as like my standard or, my pouring medium, though I know that people do it. And then I've never tried the Owatrol brand. So somebody asked me, hey, can you compare this one with this one? And I thought, yeah, let's try it. So today I'm going to do 3 separate flip cup paintings. And to do it really scientifically, nothing changes except the type of Floetrol. So as you can see, I have the same 6 colors, same size canvas. I'm going to do each flip cup in the same way. The only thing that has changed is the Floetrol, and that should tell us how do these 3 things behave in a flip cup without silicone. The consistency of this paint is sort of a medium to a medium thin. It leaves a soft trail, doesn't really mound up, kind of a little bit of a mound. So this is a great consistency if you want to get natural cells without silicone. I have 11 by 14 inch canvases, and I'm going to be using a 9-inch cup for each flip cup. And this is going to be a really interesting experiment, so let's make some paintings. My color scheme today is inspired by my son, Elliot. He is really into everything camouflage these days. All of his clothes are camouflage and he just loves camo. So I'm making camo-inspired paintings. So the colors that I have, and these are all the same, I have a nice dark brown. I forget exactly which brown. I will put all the details in the video description. This one I think is called Sap Green, a metallic bronze, I think. Titanium white. This is olive green mixed with some white to lighten it up, and then black. And I'm going to tip this over if I'm not careful. And all the colors are the same. I mixed them all 1 part paint to 2 parts Floetrol, and then thinned with water until I got that nice consistency. Now I will tell you one difference that I noticed between the Floetrols. The US and the Owatrol were pretty close to the same consistency. They were both kind of thick. They both were prone to get those stringy lumps in them. So 1 part paint to 2 parts, then they needed quite a bit of water to thin it down to that consistency. The Australian Floetrol was much thinner, so after adding that, I probably didn't even need to add water, but in order to keep it a consistent mixture, I added just a little bit of water. But Australian Floetrol is a lot thinner than the other 2. Let's start layering up these cups, and I'm going to do them all 3 at the same time to try to make sure that I do them all the same. And you guys will have to hold me accountable to my cups because occasionally I have been known to grab a cup from the wrong spot and everybody's like, you used the wrong cell activator on this one, and I'm like, oops. So for a scientific test, let me know if I'm using the wrong color or the colors from the wrong stack. So I'm not going to stack these super carefully. I could, But today I feel like doing it more in the dirty cup style, where you pour from assorted heights. I don't know that I'm going to really mix it a ton, but I'm not going to stack up really neat layers. All right, let's do a bit of the metallic bronze. The Owatrol brand is holding on to a lot more air bubbles than the other two. I think that's partly just because it is that thicker consistency, but just something to keep in mind. I think I'll add some black now. And Elliot said, "Mom, technically there is no black in camo." But I said, I think having a nice dark color is going to make this color palette look really nice. All right, last green, the lighter olive green. So I'm making kind of small layers here. It's possible that the next layer I'll do more paint in each layer. I don't know. All right, it's time to start again with some more of the brown. Yeah, I think I'll do nice big layers here. Pretty much finishing up most of that brown because I want brown to be prominent. But I'll put these in the same order, just a little bit bigger layers on this second round. I'll drop some of the white in a little deeper, just to kind of mix it through the cup. Let's watch it drop in there. I like pouring from a height. It's fun to see it fall in. Okay, a little bit of black and then some nice big layer of that olive green, and I think that'll be all. I'll pour that in too so it's partly mixed in and not just sitting on the top. Very cool. All right, so we've got 3 lovely camouflage cups of paint. Let's go ahead and put these onto the canvases. Okay, so I'll go ahead and flip them one at a time, cover the corners, flip the next one, and then we'll spread them all out, and then we'll analyze and see what's going on. All right, let's flip this first one. Ooh, very cool. Lots of green and black, but I think when we stretch it, we'll get some of the other colors too. Okay, so that was the US Floetrol. Now here's the Owatrol Floetrol. Okay, very similar, less black, but a similar kind of swoosh of colors. We do have some air bubble cells coming because this paint is fresh mixed. Last one. That's got a cool little swoop of green in the middle. I don't know what happened there. Maybe my hand shook as I was pulling it back. These all look very cool. I'm going to torch all of them to help make some new cells from those air bubbles, and also to see, do the different mixtures react differently to heat? Okay, so the US Floetrol side, I saw air bubbles popping, but not really other stuff forming because of the torch. On to Owatrol. There were so many air bubbles in that. Lots of little tiny holes, but I think some of those will stretch. All right, and Australian. Okay, again, I saw air bubbles popping. This one has a really cool band of copper cells. I hope I don't lose that as I tilt. I might, unfortunately. All right, let me get some of these cups out of the way, and then I will tilt out all these paintings. I'll go ahead and tilt these in the order that I put them out. That way they all have similar lengths between flipping and stretching. But first, let me get these corners fully covered. All right, let's stretch this out. I'm very curious to see what's going to happen. All right, while I still have a lot of paint down here, I'll cover this bottom corner, but I don't want to lose a lot because that's where a lot of my brown cells are. There we go. Fortunately, that copper is all just getting rolled over. Bummer. Okay, nice and easy to the last corner. All the way across. There we go, and on back. Okay, so I don't mind this, but do you see that really wonky cell? I'm gonna see if by coming back this way, I can make it a little less stretched out. There we go, that's not so huge. Cool. So that's not really what I was expecting. I mean, we got a lot of like air bubble cells, and that's cool, but there's a lot less brown in it than I was expecting. It's mostly that green band. It's cool. Now, anytime you do flip cups without silicone, if you just do one, you're not going to see what happens on the edges of the flip cup. Whereas if this had been like 3, then we would have seen all the different edges of the different cups, and that would have been more interesting. But these canvases were just a little bit small, and I didn't feel like filling 9 cups. So that's cool. That's our baseline. That's what I'm used to. Now let's do Owatrol, the European option for Floetrol. All right, let's see if I can tilt this without getting paint on this one or on this one. Okay, just get it moving a bit. And I'm actually going to tilt it the exact same way. So, bottom left corner first. And then back over to the bottom right. Okay, bring that back before those cells get too stretched out. And then walk it on up. All right, how much of this copper are we going to lose? Hopefully not all of it. There's a lot, but... Now, if you really wanted to keep this, you'd pour a bit of something here as a flow extender, and that would help the copper stretch out. Do you see how it's kind of like rolling under? It's getting stuck on the dry canvas. But I think, well, I don't know. I was about to say, I think we'll still have some of it left as I was pouring it all right off the edge. That's not very smart of me. Okay. It's very slippery underneath. Let me bring it back and see if I can keep any of that coppery swoop. Okay, I think we'll call that one good. All right, on to the last one. This is the Australian Floetrol. It has more cells. Now, it could be because this one did seem slightly thinner consistency than the other two. Even though I tried to make them all the same, this one, as I filled the cup, I could tell it's just a little bit thinner. But let's go ahead and tilt it. This one, I'm going to start on this corner because there's just so much paint over here. And then I love those copper cells, and I don't want to lose too many of them, so I'm bringing the paint up before I bring it across. Okay, and back up. Alright, now what to do with this green squiggle? It's very interesting. Alright, I would love to not lose all that copper, so I'm just barely gonna touch the edge. And then come back. On to the last corner. Unfortunately, those copper cells are all getting squashed right off the side. Aww, that's too bad. But as they stand, they look out of place, so I'm going to have to send them over the edge. So we're going to tilt back this way. Until all that copper has crossed the edge. And then we can start finding our finished form. Okay, I think there's a lump that I'm seeing. Let me try to get that out. Okay. Oh, it didn't lift like a hard lump. So maybe it was just paint that wasn't quite mixed well enough. All right, let me get those edges covered. All right, so this is super interesting. Obviously, they're all very similar, but we see some differences. And it's hard to know exactly like what differences are caused by just chance and what differences are because of the mixture, but I'm finished. Let me give you a close-up and we'll look at all those details. All right, so here are all three. Let's start with the US Floetrol. So we got lots of air bubble cells that came up. Not a lot of huge cells, but plenty of color. Lots of that brown and green in there. That little cell looks like an eye. That's so funny. All right, then over to the Owatrol. This one has a very similar feel. Like the texture, that kind of, I don't know, not pebbly, but like, you know, kind of spongy. It's got a nice spongy texture like the US Floetrol does. Similar band of green and brown cells there in the white. And some more copper there, though it didn't come up quite as much as with the US Floetrol. And then we had that lovely copper and white band up there, which I kept just a little bit of. And then the Australian Floetrol, this one had definitely the most interesting flip. It had a squiggly top and it had a lot more cells develop. But you see these cells got way overstretched as I tilted. These ones, I don't know, these might be new cells. I don't remember those as I tilted. So maybe those are continuing to rise. So that squiggle was a little bit hard to get it laid out quite right. And of course we lost all the beautiful copper cells from up there. This one seems a little bit more solid in terms of its coloring versus that kind of sponge look. So I don't know if that's the Australian Floetrol. Also the different way that it spread, I don't know if that's because it was slightly thinner or because it was a more reactive formula. So let's let these dry and then I will show you how they all look then. Okay, they're dry. So these dried really nicely. No stretching or bugs. No new cells or anything really developed. It just pretty much stayed the same as it was, though we can now see that lovely copper showing, or bronze, or whichever color it is. I'll have that detail in the video description. So that's really nice. So it is really interesting to see all three of these side by side. I think the basic conclusion that I've come to is that you can use all three of these for a basic flip cup. They all work. Though I think for the Australian Floetrol, because it's a thinner consistency to begin with, I would probably only mix it 1-to-1 with your paint instead of 2 parts Floetrol to 1 part paint if you want to keep a thicker consistency. But the US Floetrol and the Owatrol version of Floetrol were very, very similar. I think maybe the US Floetrol is slightly more reactive than the Owatrol, but they behaved very close and their consistency while mixing was also very close. So it's nice to know that you don't have to spend the extra money to get US Floetrol if you live in Europe. The Owatrol should work at least for the basic pours like flip cups, ring pours, strainer pours, things like that. Thank you so much for joining me for this Floetrol comparison test. Let me know down in the comments, would you like to see me compare these mixtures in any other types of pours, like maybe something with silicone, or maybe a hairdryer pour like a Dutch pour? What would be helpful for you to see? I can't wait to see you all in the next video. Bye guys!